The orphan brat got the water dragon angel sealed inside him just to awaken his power to fight the angel of all dragons years later. There was, hey warriors, how is it going? And yes, you see me, I am Naruto Uzumaki, the Hokage of Leaf Village. Just kidding, you know I am just an AI, but behind this shape, I am here to entertain you with enormous, amazing recaps of all animes you can imagine. So without talking too much, let's dive in our story.
Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world.
The orphan brat got the water dragon angel sealed inside him just to awaken his power to fight the angel of all dragons years later. There was once an archipelago of 4 islands called the Ayaka Islands. 3 of them were inhabited by stupid humans, and 1 of them by the 2 elemental dragons of fire and water. These dragons were the protectors of the islands, and there was a legend about them. Long ago, one of the dragons, the water dragon, grew weak, and the fire dragon went absolutely nuts. The water dragon was the one that gave life, and the fire dragon was the one that took life. When the life-giving dragon grew weaker, the ley energy, an energy source responsible for everything on Earth, was disrupted. This caused the fire dragon to go insane. Bro had no chill and absolutely wrecked everyone. But one day, Gandalf arrived. He gave up his own life to restore the water dragon's diminishing powers. After this happened, the water dragon was like, alright, we cool now. Fire dragon bro. The balance saved the islands, returning life back to them. A brat named Yukito Yanagi lived on the 2nd island of the Ayaka Islands with his father, Makoto, who looked like Ace from One Piece. Yukito had an older brother named Jingi, whom his father adopted as his student. Jingi was very close to Yukito when they were young, because, as you can see, he hugged him one time when they were playing together. Baby Yukito held Jingi's finger and his bending powers activated. Water suddenly started to form around Jingi's finger, coming from Yukito's hand. It created a portable swimming pool in the shape of a ball that started to fill up around Yukito and Jingi. Jingi was confused and scared, but before anything could happen, Makoto arrived and used a main expansion to neutralize his powers. Jingi asked what had happened, and Makoto told him that Yukito was special, and that his water powers were very strong. Jingi was told not to tell anyone in their family, especially his older brothers, Haru and Akka, because it was a secret. The secret was that Yukito just liked to get wet, and he was also the water dragon. He just didn't look like one. Jingi liked sharing this secret with his master, and talked about it with him when the older brothers weren't around. Jingi thought Yukito was very small and wondered if he would ever turn back into the water dragon. Makoto told him that when Yukito became older, he would be able to turn into the water dragon and still maintain his human form. But even then, Makoto would have to perform a difficult ritual. He told Jingi that it would be fine, since he would be the one performing the ritual. All Jingi needed to do was protect Yukito. Jingi accepted this and held Yukito's hand with a smile on his face. One day, these 2 twinks, Haru and Akka, came home from their job of pacifying evil creatures called Aramatama with their master, Makoto. The 2 boys were Makoto's students, as was Jingi. They trained every day to become lay masters as well, just like their master. The master and his students were very close-knit, along with the mayor of the islands, Aneo, as well as their landlady, Mamoko. They were like family, and the students were like brothers. Despite the fighting between the students for their master's favor, they seemed to get along very well and always rooted for each other. Momoko would tell them not to fight in front of Yukito because Yukito would ask questions. Haru and Akka would then stop fighting because they wanted to set a good example for Yukito. This would make Makoto laugh and tell them that they were family and should act like it. Afterward, the 2 students would train, and Jingi would watch them and tell them to take it easy. Haru explained to him that he wanted to take over their shrine when Makoto retired. He wanted to be strong enough to do that. AKA asked Jingi why he wasn't training, even though he was also a student and was very strong at water-based lay mastery. Jingi replied that he was just built different and didn't need to train. But Makoto kicked him from behind and told him that he wasn't David Martinez. He was supposed to still train and carefully consider how to use his abilities. Jingi was unhappy with what his master had done because he was just joking. AKA went over to his master and asked him to let Haru preside over the dragon pacifying ritual. He would back him up and help him become the next priest of the shrine. Makoto told him, "Nah bro, Haru is not ready for that yet." Even when Akka argued that they had helped perform other rituals, Makoto told Akka and Haru that if they continued their training, Haru, with the help of Akka and Jingi, would become a virgin nerd, or in simpler terms, a priest in a few years. Haru and Akka promised to do their best, but Jingi wasn't on board because he didn't want to pacify the fire dragon every year. Makoto told him that he would have to because the fire dragon just missed the water dragon. That's why it was lashing out. He was worried that the fire dragon would soon become an Aramatama. Haru asked if that was the reason they had to strengthen the barrier they put on the 4th island, where the dragon lived. Makoto agreed that was the reason he didn't want them to perform the rituals. It was a very important job. But Akka was worried that the fire dragon's suppressed powers kept increasing by the years. He wished that they could do more, but he didn't say anything to oppose his master. Momoko arrived with some Dairy Queen and helped them to a refreshing break. As the days went by, Akka and Haru continued their training as well as their formal education. Momoko stayed at home with Yukito and cooked whatever the hell they were looking at. The brothers and their master had fun together, going on multiple quests to pacify Armatama between the islands. Seasons came and went, and the unconventional family enjoyed every last one of them. One day, an earthquake started playing dubstep in the islands non-stop because of the fire dragon on the 4th island. Makoto decided to get the job done while his students kept everyone safe back at home. Makoto hoped that he would come back home as soon as possible. He first went to get a weapon that would help him pacify the dragon properly. While he was away, the earthquakes became persistent and scared even the Matama, the small water creatures that showed the harmony of the island. However, Akka and Haru decided to level up their stupidity and take matters into their own hands. They decided that the best way to save the islands was for some noobs to go to the 4th island and pacify the dragon themselves. The two students tried their best to hold off the dragon from ascending out of a volcano. To their bad luck, the barrier that was holding back the dragon's powers broke, and this exhausted their spirit energy. They tried to keep the dragon at bay, but the fire dragon was in the volcano. The people on the other islands saw a volcanic eruption and decided to ride a cruise ship to Thailand. Jingi took little Yukito by the hand and led him to one of the evacuation ferries. Yukito couldn't comprehend the situation because he didn't even go to school. Haru decided to help Akka, which gave the dragon a chance to launch an attack. Haru quickly got Akka out of the way, which made him angry because Haru was prioritizing him over their mission. The dragon kept on attacking the two, and it seemed there was no way out until their master arrived. He told the kids to leave it up to him and get out. AKA wanted to help, but Haru got him out of there, which frustrated him even more. He didn't want to leave his master at the mercy of the fire dragon. Makoto realized how dire the situation was, and knew people's lives depended on him. His fight with the dragon looked like a volcanic eruption, and everyone was running for their lives. And just like Ace, Makoto died. AKA and Haru found him at the end of the volcano. On the day that Makoto was laid to rest, Anu discussed his will with Momoko. In his will, Makoto had instructed them to take Yukito to the mainland to live there and cut ties with him until the age of 15. The two of them couldn't understand Makoto's decision. However, Jingi asked them to trust his master and do as Makoto wanted. Jingi didn't understand his master's reasons either, but he knew it was because Yukito was the sleeping water dragon. He wondered what would happen to Yukito if he grew older on the mainland all by himself. At some point, Yukito would need the special ritual that Makoto wanted to perform to turn him into the water dragon. Now that Makoto was no more, the one to do it would be Jingi. Jingi saw this as his responsibility because his older brothers didn't know about it. He looked for the ritual and found it. He studied everything that Makoto had left behind about it. He wrote the process from the time he turned the water dragon and turned it into Yukito. He then wrote how he was going to sacrifice his life like the legendary hermit to turn Yukito into the water dragon. He thought it would be impossible to even do what Makoto wrote in his notes, but Jingi chose to trust his master and be the one to finish the job. It was a hard decision because he would have to sacrifice himself too. After mastering the ritual, he prepared to sacrifice himself in exchange for the peace of the island. It was not his style, but he was raised by the island. He owed it to them for his life. He decided to live his life fast and enjoy it to the fullest because he knew he didn't have much longer. One day, after 10 years had passed, he heard Inuo talking to Momoko about going to get Yukito from the mainland. Jingi volunteered to be the one to do it. After 10 years, after Yukito went to the mainland, he received a letter from Inuo telling him about coming back home to Aika. That night, while sleeping, he had a dream in which he was underwater. It was a dream he'd had many times before, but it didn't surprise him anymore. He had come to like the dream because it made him feel peaceful. He even preferred being there rather than in the real world, where he would have to interact with people. Suddenly, a hand reached for him and pulled him out of the water. This woke him up, and he found that the room was shaking violently before abruptly stopping. The next day, Yukito graduated and had to move out of his foster home and go back to Aika. When one of his teachers asked him if he was okay with going back to Aika, he told her that it didn't make any difference in his life. Even though he had lived his whole life in foster homes, his life was not hard, and people treated him fine. However, he still blamed himself for his loneliness because he was a lonely nerd otaku, and all anime protagonists are like that. As he was walking, he saw some students watching an older Jingi downing some beers at the school's entrance. When Jingi spotted him coming, he breathed in front of him, but Yukito didn't seem to know who he was because he was wearing glasses. This left Jingi confused because he was sure that it was him. Yukito tried to ignore him and walk away, but Jingi didn't give up. He followed him out of the school, which became annoying. Jingi then got an idea and pushed Yukito off a bridge, sending him into the Shadow Realm. Yukito was shocked and confused because he didn't know how to swim. He panicked because his school uniform was too heavy for him to swim. At that moment, his eyes glowed as a power overcame him, and he started to spin in the water. He became worried because he remembered something similar happening when he was young. Jingi saw this and confirmed that he was Yukito. He cast a spell that stopped him from spinning while ascending to the surface. Yukito was surprised by the outcome, but Jingi cast another spell that transported Yukito into his bag and then took him to Brazil. When Yukito woke up, he found himself in the middle of the Pacific Ocean instead. He was confused by his surroundings and demanded to know what was going on. Jingi told him that they were going back to Aika. When Yukito heard the name, he realized that Jingi had also grown up there and was the person who had come to pick him up, as Inoue had said in the letter. Still, Yukito didn't know Jingi anymore, as he didn't remember him and how they had been very close before he left. Jingi then introduced himself and told Yukito about how they were like brothers when they were young. Soon they arrived at the second island of Aika and were welcomed by Inuo and Momoko, who told Yukito that they would become his guardians from now on. Yukito also doesn't recognize them, and they tell him all about their relationship 10 years ago. Yukito thanks them and tells them that he doesn't remember much about them or the place, but they tell him not to worry about it. They go back to the mayor's house, and on the way, Yukito sees a small water creature called a matama floating around. He doesn't know what it is, but still doesn't think much of it. They then arrive at the house, and Yukito is told to make himself at home. Jingi tells him to look around and see if he can remember anything. Yukito sees a photo of himself when he was younger with his father, Jingi, and the rest of the family. He doesn't remember any of the people in the photo, not even his father, and is surprised to see someone photoshopped his face in there. The others tell him what kind of person his father was and what he did for work as a laymaster. Yukito realizes that he too has powers that he can't explain and thinks that he must have taken after his father. Jingi tells him that all he needs to do is practice how to use the power he has, and he'll understand it. When Yukito asks about his mother, he's told that they don't know her because his father just showed up with him without any explanation. It's not what Yukito wants to hear, but it's the only thing they know. Inuo apologizes because it must have been hard for Yukito to be alone all these years when he has a home. Yukito then inquires why he was asked to come back anyways, and Inuo confesses that it's what his father wanted. They were the instructions that he left behind, but they don't know the reasons behind it. Inuo apologizes for this and asks to make it up to Yukito by giving him a place to live. Yukito decides to accept this because even though the situation is confusing, what's done is done. He goes to his room and Jingi follows him there because Jingi is worried about him. He feels like Yukito became a bit cold and closed off, unlike when he was a child. He asks why that is, and Yukito tells him about the time he was in foster care. One day he went to the river with some kids. One of the kids called him an orphaned monkey, which made him angry. Because of his anger, his power, which caused the water in the river to flow up and attack the kid. The kid was tapping in midair, and this strange power scared Yukito. He takes a nap after making the kid dance underwater. It kept happening over and over again, which made him stay away from people. This helped keep his emotions in check and stop hurting people. When he's done talking, he sees that Jingy was watching an anime recap, and this frustrates him, so he storms out of the room to cool off. He tries to calm down, but he thinks he's Goku doing an instant teleportation. He doesn't understand why he has to interact with people again when he tried so hard to avoid it. Right then, a Madama appears, and Yukito notices it seems like it's boiling and in pain. This is something unusual because they usually look friendly and cute. It falls into a river nearby, causing the water to burst. A mask-like face with a red light emitting from its eye appears. It tries to attack Yukito, but Jingy arrives and gets Yukito out of the way while the creature fully develops its body. Jingy tells Yukito that this is an aromatama, which is a Madama that is attracted to main characters and becomes corrupt. Because Yukito was frustrated, the Madama became corrupted by his negative emotion and transformed into this badly animated CGI. Yukito doesn't know what to do, but Jingy tells him to sit back and watch his domain expansion. The aromatama forms 5 energy spheres to launch at them. Jingy activates his power of throwing hands and punches the creature before it can do anything. This breaks it up into bits of water splashes but doesn't defeat it. When Jingy notices he failed, he decides to push Yukito into its water stomach to rile him up. This frustrates Yukito so much that his power suddenly activates, and he causes the aromatama to explode. However, his frustration also causes the water around him to attack Jingy. Luckily, Jingy nullifies the attack easily. Yukito is amazed by Jingy but also scared that he ended up attacking him unintentionally. Jingy tells him not to be scared of his power so much because his problem is his lack of control over them. Yukito doesn't think he can do it, but Jingy encourages him to try and promises to help him train. The aromatama gets purified and returns to the ley energy. Jingy tells Yukito that he'll show him everything he knows, so he should calm down and try not to be alone all the time. When Jingy fist bumps his forehead, Yukito gets a memory of him when he was young, doing the same thing. Yukito starts training with Jingy the next day, but he doesn't understand how he is supposed to control his power if his training is about sitting and holding an invisible hamburger. Jingy tells him it will help him, but for now, he should focus on feeling his ley energy. Yukito is confused because he doesn't understand what this so-called ley energy is. Jingy explains that this is some sort of vital energy that flows deep in the earth. However, the biggest concentration of ley energy in the world is located beneath their island. Jingy reveals that ley masters like them use the island's energy to keep things under control. However, Yukito's own power is different from his, therefore Yukito needs the island's energy to help him control his power. Soon, they get a request to take care of an aromatama that suddenly appeared. Jingy thinks this will help Yukito with his training. He helps him come up with a plan to confront the aromatama. While they're hiding and discussing the plan, the aromatama hears them and appears before them. First, it starts firing some water projectiles at them, but only aiming for Jingy. It even chases him when he tries to run away, leaving Yukito just standing there confused. Jingy tells Yukito to attack the aromatama while it has its back on him. Yukito uses a spell that helps him hit the monster on the back and exhaust it, but not quite defeat it. When the aromatama is down, Jingy uses his ultimate to finish it off. This causes it to crumble down, leaving behind a puddle and some cans of beer which it had collected. However, the aromatama gets back up because Jingy failed to completely defeat it. He tries to command it, but it doesn't take his orders. It attacks him again. Jingy tries to run away, but it hits him with a water projectile, causing him to fall. He tries to talk it out, but this doesn't help him at all. He asks Yukito to do something, but Yukito doesn't know what to do. He tries to think of a way to help. At that moment, Haru appears and uses his virgin energy to suck the aromatama into a whirlwind and purifies it. He comes down to reprimand Jingy for drinking so much and wants him to stop, but Jingy isn't gonna do that anytime soon. He enjoys it. Yukito thanks Haru for helping save their lives. Haru turns to look at him and becomes happy to see him. He lifts him up into the air because he likes little boys now. Yukito is stunned by this action because he doesn't remember Haru. When Jingi tells Haru this and that he's scaring Yukito, he finally puts him down. He introduces himself to Yukito and tells him that he was also training under his father. Haru takes Yukito home so that they can enjoy some dinner with Momoko. The three of them have a meal, which was Yukito's favorite when he was a child, for dinner. He loved Momoko's cooking. Yukito wishes to remember that, but he can't. He praises Haru for how he took care of the Arumatama earlier. Haru tells him that lay mastery is about purifying the Arumatama and keeping the harmony of the islands. The Matama aren't their allies because they don't harm them, but they aren't their enemies either because they don't become corrupt intentionally. They just want to coexist, so the lay master's job is to help that cause by all means. Yukito understands. On another day, Jingi takes Yukito to another one of the islands, the first island. It's way more developed because it has musicians, couples sitting on a bench, a train on the road, and leftover food. They travel by train, which runs on a railway in the water. Yukito is excited to see this train because he's never seen something so dumb. Jingi tells him that he used to do the same thing when he was young, but he doesn't remember that, so it doesn't matter. When they arrive, they go and see the main attractions, which are nowhere to be seen. When they go into the streets, Jingi manages to abandon Yukito. As they continue to walk around, they see a juggler performing an impressive act. Yukito likes the act and the place because he has never been a gacha player outside before. He tries to tell Jingi but finds that he has abandoned him once again. While looking around for him, Yukito sees that the crowd around the clown is screaming in terror. The ball the clown was using as part of his act turns into an Arumatama. Yukito realizes the danger of the situation and tries to help the clown before the Arumatama can attack. He feels that he must deal with the situation as the people around run away. Since this is his anime and he's the main character, he's the only one who can do it. He faces the monster and tries to channel his power to come forth and fight. The Arumatama goes to attack him, but it gets stopped by another man in a suit. The man is Aka, who uses the Second Amendment to take out the Arumatama, surprising Yukito. AKA tells him that there are more Arumatama escaping the barrier set to prevent them from coming out. Despite this, Aka seems happy to see Yukito, even after so long, just like everyone else. He takes him along while they talk about the past and introduces himself as one of Yukito's father's old students. He comments on how different Yukito is from his father, which is what everyone has been saying since he came back. Yukito wonders how a lay master is taking care of the Arumatama by using a pistol. AKA explains it's just like how the forefathers intended. Yukito is surprised that there's a different method for doing the job and wonders how that works. Right then, Aka invites him inside a building where he runs a business, a lounge. When they enter, Jingi greets them from behind the counter. Yukito gets annoyed to see him because he left him in the middle of the street. After Yukito and Aka take a seat, Yukito begins to ask Aka some questions. When he saw Haru pacify an Arumatama, they seemed happy, which is what the lay masters try to achieve. But when he saw Aka do it, it seemed rough and aggressive. AK reveals that he didn't pacify the Arumatama, he exterminated it instead. He explains that the purifying process helps the Arumatama go back to being part of the energy again. However, he doesn't do that because he's edgy and cool, so he completely gets rid of them because they harm people. Tourists don't know about the things that happen on the islands. The Arumatama take advantage of that and hurt them, which angers him so much. He would rather just get rid of them. Yukito doesn't agree with the method because Haru does it with his femboy powers, and it works. But Aka doesn't care too much about the Arumatama compared to humans. He would rather save the people and clap the monsters, not giving them another chance to come back again. AKA thinks Haru is obsessed with the teachings of Makoto and purifying the Arumatama. He, on the other hand, just likes to shoot them. Yukito refuses to accept the way Aka does things. AKA tells him that he doesn't have to. It won't change how he does his job. AKA student Abara arrives to tell Aka that they have found the main body of the Arumatama from earlier. Yukito wonders what that means because he was there when Aka shot it. AK explains that the Aramatama didn't have an eye like the ones he'd seen before. That means its real body was somewhere else, and it was just scouting the area. He tells Jingi to take Yukito and go home, and tells Yukito that he's always welcome to return to the lounge. He leaves with Ibara. Jingi and Yukito walk back to the train home. Yukito asks Jingi what kind of company Aka works for. Jingi replies that it's a company that shoots first and asks questions later. Yukito asks what Jingi thinks about this, especially their methods of dealing with these incidents. Jingi thinks they are doing a good job, but that's not what Yukito wants to hear. Jingi explains that because of the increase in tourism to the islands, many Aramatama have been appearing due to the energy the tourists bring from outside. Despite it not being their intention, they disrupt the harmonious energy of the islands. They end up getting hurt by the Aramatama, and Aka acts accordingly. As much as one would want to do the right thing every time, the Aramatama and Matama can't be measured by human standards. Sometimes you get hurt trying to deal with them, and they won't sympathize with you like a human being would. Yukito asks what Haru thinks about Aka's methods. Jingi replies that he doesn't think very highly of them, but warns him not to mention either of them to the other because of their history. Yukito wonders why, because he thought they were both his father's students and that they were brothers. Jingi doesn't tell him anything further. He leaves him behind because he forgot his allowance at Aka's place. He tells him to head home first while he runs back to Aka's. Yukito leaves. Because he's been abandoned by Jingi before, it's no big deal at this point. As he's walking and thinking about how he sees himself in the Aramatama, the ground suddenly shakes, and he hears a loud growl, and people start appearing just to create a scene of panic. Yukito runs in the direction of it all so that he can find out what's happening. He meets one of the members of Aka's company, Makita, and reveals to him that he's also a laymaster so he can be let through. He goes to confront the Aramatama there and thinks about how Aka told him that the Aramatama won't hesitate to hurt people. Yukito thinks about how he can try to purify it. He uses his powers to cast a purifying spell. Unfortunately, his spell isn't strong enough, and his powers don't work on motorcycles. At that moment, Aka's security team uses American firepower on the monster, and Jingi arrives to get Yukito out of there in time. The team continues to fire, but the Aramatama remains unaffected still. Jingi wonders what Aka's plan is if they can't bring down the Aramatama before the team runs out of ammunition. AKA arrives and prepares to take care of the situation by farting using his hand. He faces the creature and unleashes his Chidori, which has a dark aura around it. After casting a spell, he starts to transform and grunts as if in pain. His arm changes into that of an Aramatama with an eye in the middle of his hand. When the Aramatama attacks him, he easily slaps it away with his transformed hand. Jingi explains to Yukito that what Aka is doing is absorbing the Aramatama's energy and making it his own. The creature gets back up and faces Aka once more. It charges at him, but Aka cuts it down before it can do anything. He then squeezes a lemon at the monsters in black and white to look cool. AKA vows that he will become stronger than his late master and stronger than the dragon. He takes the eye he has cut from the Aramatama and squeezes its juices into his mouth, consuming it. This reverses his transformation and makes him calmer. Yukito doesn't know what to make of this sight, and Jingi doesn't know what to tell him either. Later, while tailing Aka, Yukito realizes the pain that he is in due to the earlier fight. The next day, Jingi takes Yukito to the third island, which is where Haru and his students live and train. The island is calmer and less developed, only having forests and shrines. Jingi doesn't like it. There's no Wi-Fi or girls on the island. Yukito was hoping to meet Haru and maybe become friends with his students. The two get welcomed by the students, Chitiro and Yako, whom Jingi doesn't like very much. They also don't really like him because of his character. They lead him and Yukito up to a shrine, which is dedicated to the dragons in the fourth island. When Yukito questions further, they tell him where the dragons live and show him the island, which is visible from there. Because the dragons went on a rampage a long time ago, the shrine was built to pacify them. And they tell Yukito the recent history that the dragons made and how that was the reason his father died. Yukito remembers that Aka also mentioned wanting to become stronger than a dragon before. Now he knows that it's the fire dragon he was referring to. He gets a memory of some sort where he thinks he has met a dragon before, but he sees nothing except for water in the memory. He's suddenly jolted back to reality when Jingi bothers the students to have a drink with him. As Jingi is forcefully dragging them away to have a drink, Haru arrives. He welcomes Yukito to the shrine and takes him to the archives inside. Haru offers him some fentanyl to make him feel at ease and asks why he came to see him. Yukito tells him about the other day when he went to the first island and met Aka. Haru doesn't want to hear about Akka, but lets Yukito continue. Yukito tells him that he saw Akka exercise an aromatama with a pistol. He doesn't understand why he has to use this method and asks for Haru's opinion. Haru doesn't say anything about Akka. He asks Yukito if he knows about ley energy, and Yukito says yes, but only what Jingi told him. He asks him if he knows how ley masters use their power, and Yukito confirms that he's been told. Haru shows him the 3 islands outside and tells him about the large current of 5G energy they have, which Yukito should be able to feel too. He tells him to close his eyes and focus while narrating how ley energy works and what ley masters do with it. He tells Yukito to look deeper into his consciousness, the mainstream of this energy, which is where the ley masters draw their power from. As Yukito is doing that, Haru stops him before he can go any deeper. This experience excites Yukito, but Haru tells him that he should be careful when doing this because it can be dangerous. A matama appears to them, and Haru teaches Yukito that the matama are made from the same ley energy and are harmless, but can turn into aromatama if the place becomes tainted. He reiterates that the job of ley masters is to purify these creatures and return them to the mainstream. Yukito replies by telling him that Akka ate an eye of the aromatama he exercised to become stronger. But Haru knows all about it. He tells Yukito that Akka is also tainting himself. In that way, he's becoming an aromatama as well. Yukito wonders why Akka is doing this awful thing just for power. As the days go by, Jingi continues to train Yukito on how to control his powers. Yukito seems to know how to draw the energy, but not how to control it. During his training, he tries acting like he's Gojo and falls down. It's just an earthquake that shakes the 4 islands. Jingi tells him that he shouldn't be scared by a mere earthquake and lose focus like that. He needs to train more. The next day, another earthquake happens, which prompts Jingi to invite Yukito to his late master's grave. When they get to the grave, Jingi sits down and drinks some alcohol. Yukito doesn't understand why they have to pay respects to his father just because of the earthquake. Right then, 3 elders arrive to pay their respects as well. They reveal that because of the earthquakes the previous day and in the morning, the fire dragon must be in a bad mood. They ask Jingi to pay his respects to Makoto so that he can protect the islands. They all exchange a little banter here and there until Yukito asks what his father did to protect the islands 10 years ago. The elders ask Jingi to tell him everything. Jingi starts by pointing out the 2 dragons that live on the 4th island and goes on about their history and what happened 10 years ago. Because of the fire dragon going on a rampage, the islands almost sank into the ocean, but they didn't because Makoto sat on the ground for 10 years in exchange for his life. They all continue to chat and Yukito pays his respects to his late father, whom he still doesn't remember. A second later they spot Ibara leaving the area and Jingi invites her for a drink, but she ignores them. Jingi takes Yukito to pay respects at her parents' graves. Yukito sees Ibara's keys that she accidentally dropped there and asks Jingi to accompany him to the first island to return them. Yukito apologizes for dragging Jingi to the first island. He doesn't hope to get along with Akka's student, but he knows she'll need her keys. Jingi doesn't think it's a big deal since he likes the first island. They arrive at Akka's place and find him about to leave. They tell him why they are there, and he tells them to speak to Makita before leaving. He tells Yukito to be careful on his way home because things may get rough. Yukito wonders what Akka means, but doesn't get an answer. The 2 then sit down and speak with Makita. Yukito apologizes for the way they behaved at the cemetery because it might have upset Ibara. Makita tells him not to worry about it because people in Aika do laugh and have fun at the cemetery as a way to pay respects. Although that depends mostly on how the person died, which might make others feel sad, like Ibara. Yukito asks how Ibara's parents died, and Makita tells him the story. A few years back, a fire aromatama appeared and attacked her house, burning it to the ground. AKA intervened, but it was too late for Ibara's parents. He explains that it was a canon event, but some people find it hard to accept and take out their anger on the aromatama by exterminating them. Jingi complains that the talk has gone too dark, and Makita apologizes. Yukito asks Makita to give Ibara her keys, but Makita thinks that Yukito should do it himself. He calls Ibara to come out and meet with Yukito. The 2 are both a little shy at first, but Yukito ends up giving the keys back, and Ibara thanks him. Before they can chat any further, the ground shakes again. Makita thinks that it's another earthquake, but Jingi corrects him, saying that it is a fire aromatama. This prompts Ibara to rush out of there. Makita tells Jingi and Yukito, who are confused, that Ibara acts recklessly when there's a fire aromatama around. Jingi decides that he and Yukito should go and stop her while Makita informs Akka. While Akka is talking to Enwo about the recent aromatama incident and how they need to prepare for evacuation soon, he receives a call informing him about the appearance of the fire aromatama. Jingi and Yukio run towards the explosions that are being caused by the aromatama. On their way, they encounter a woman who is smoking crack while vaping. Jingi helps her and tells Yukito to continue tailing Ibara. Ibara makes it to the Arumatama, which is attacking 2 civilians. She defends them and prepares to take on the creature on her own. Memories of her father's death flood her mind, making her vow to not run away anymore. She charges at the creature and tries to attack it, but it easily stops her. It launches a fire attack at her, but Yukito arrives in time to block it, making Ibara remember how Aka defended her the same way. The Arumatama doesn't stop blasting them with fire, but Yukito keeps up the barrier he's created with water. He uses a spell to attack the monster, and although it's effective, it's not enough to take it down. Yukito asks Ibara to run away as Chatero and Yako come to them. The Arumatama blasts them with another fire attack that gets blocked by Yukito's shield, but only slightly. Yukito tells the others to run away because the Arumatama is too powerful for them to handle. Ibara refuses to do that because if they run away, the Arumatama will chase them. This could bring harm to the people on the island if they ever get caught in the fight. She tells them that she can handle it on her own and goes to face it alone. She manages to land a strike on the creature using her power of lightning and asks Yukito to help back her up. Yukito creates a bigger barrier to wash the Arumatama in water and extinguish its fire. It works initially, but the creature is still standing. Now they have to do it again. Yukito is worried that they won't win against it, but they're lay masters. It's their job to do this. He asks Chatero and Yako to help as well, and all of them bombard the creature with attack after attack. However, this is still not enough to take the Arumatama down. The group has to do it again and again, using wind, water, and lightning to overwhelm it until they manage to successfully purify it. They celebrate their win, but that's short-lived when 3 fire rocks approach from the 4th island and fall next to them. The rocks quickly turn into Arumatama, which immediately attack them with fire. Luckily, Yukito acts fast and forms a water barrier around himself and the others to protect them. He becomes exhausted almost immediately though, and the barrier comes undone. Ibara devises a plan. She will act as a decoy while the others run because there's no other way. But before they can run, one Arumatama creates a fire barrier around them, blocking any way of escape and forcing them to fight. Yukito knows that the Arumatama are too strong, but he wants to protect everyone and promises to not let them die. His eyes glow as his power surges, but they stop when Haru appears and takes care of the Arumatama currently attacking them. AKA also appears and takes care of another one, and the two of them deal with the third one together, yet not completely getting rid of it. While they check on their students, the third Arumatama gets back up, which makes Aka a bit happy. He goes to take the eye of the Arumatama that he shot to try and consume it, but Haru purifies it immediately. This angers Aka, and Haru asks him what Makoto would think if he saw him using black magic. AKA is sick of this question because Makoto died as a result of their weakness. He wants to avenge him and doesn't want Haru to stand in his way. As they argue, the third Arumatama prepares to launch an attack at them. Before it can do that though, Haru uses his wind power to destroy some parts of it and Aka shoots it in the eye. When the eye falls down, Aka runs to grab it, but when Haru sees this, he pushes him out of the way with the wind. This angers Aka because he doesn't want Haru to stand in his way. He channels his black magic and his arm transforms. He uses it to block all of Haru's attacks. Jingi arrives and purifies the eye while the other two masters are not looking, risking infuriating Aka even more. Jingi expresses his disappointment in them because they're fighting in front of their students, and Makoto wouldn't approve of this behavior. The two teachers realize their mistake and go to apologize to their students. Haru tells Aka that Makoto wouldn't approve of his use of black magic, but Aka doesn't care about what a dead man thinks. Later in the evening, Ibara sees off Yukito, Jingi, and Haru's students at the train station. They discuss the events of the day and are impressed with each other. Yukito thanks Ibara for working with him to defeat the monster and hopes to work together again. When he praises her for her courage, Ibara asks him for his number so they can stay in touch. Chatero and Yako also wish to stay in touch with Ibara, but because of the issues between their masters, they decide it's best to stay away from each other. They will still keep in contact with Yukito though, and become friends with him outside of work. In the end, the four students stay in touch with each other, ignoring the beef between their masters. When Yukito gets home that night, he asks Momoko about what happened between Aka and Haru, and she recounts everything she knows. She says that Haru didn't tell her the details of his fight with Aka, but he did tell her that the day they found Makoto lifeless, Aka was never the same. He felt like he couldn't continue living on the islands anymore and reconsidered his future as a lay master. This made him and Haru fight a lot, to the point where Aka eventually decided to quit and left. He tried to return years later, but his relationship with Haru was never the same because he also decided to quit their master's teachings. The next day, Yukito is sleeping on the porch while Jingi is inside drinking. He has the dream that he usually had when he was still on the mainland. He hasn't gotten the dream in a long time though. In the dream, instead of lying afloat on the water like he always does, he turns to look below. In the deep, he sees a red light illuminating. When he looks closely, he sees the mainstream of the ley energy, which is quickly taken over by the sudden red light. The light turns out to be the eye of an aromatama, which is trying to reach for him. This causes him to feel a drowning effect and start struggling, which jolts him awake. Jingi asks what it is, and he tells him that it's just a strange dream. Jingi sees that his eyes are glowing a bright blue, but doesn't ask about it at that moment. Yukito gets messages from his friends inviting him to the festival on the third island. Yukito is so happy to receive such an invite because it's his first time, and after a long time of being lonely, he's happy to finally have friends to enjoy the festival with. Jingi, who peeks at his messages over his shoulder, gives him a mask that belonged to Makoto. It's customary to wear a mask at the festival, so this will suit him nicely. The night of the festival arrives, and Jingi takes Yukito there. Yukito is impressed by the sight, the crowd, and everything there. Later, while everyone is still enjoying the festival, the volcano on the fourth island erupts as the fire dragon has woken up once again. The people at the festival see that a disaster is about to happen and start to panic. They remember 10 years ago when things started this way. Eno calms them down so that they can prepare to evacuate the islands before the volcano burns them all down. Yukito is worried and asks Jingi what they're supposed to do. Jingi laughs and asks Yukito what he thinks about the islands. Yukito doesn't understand how Jingi is laughing at a time like this and asking pointless questions. He replies that he likes the islands. Jingi says that he too likes the islands and performs a teleportation spell, leaving without warning Yukito. Yukito is left stunned, not knowing what to do at all. The next day, while the islanders are evacuating, Haru arrives with his students to talk to Yukito. He tells Yukito about what's already happening, what happened 10 years ago, and why it's happening again. He tells him that 15 years ago, when the water dragon's power diminished, Makoto was the one to handle the matter. He performed a ritual to restore the water dragon's power to balance the energy. In the process, he removed the dragon from the ley energy and transformed its massive life current into a smaller one, which could be nurtured. This would help the dragon regain its former power and return to the ley energy when ready. That dragon is Yukito. This is explainable by his incredible talent with ley mastery and his power despite being an amateur. It also coincides with the timeline. Haru is only suspecting though. He's not sure but wants to confirm it. He asks Yukito to place his hand against his to check. Haru uses a spell which confirms his suspicion. Yukito is the water dragon, which Makoto made into his son. But since Yukito is a human boy, he will need to train tremendously for a long time to access his full power and bring peace to the islands. Another option would be to perform a new ritual to release him back to the ley energy. Haru asks Yukito to train very hard and become a healthy man so that he can someday become his true self. He asks his students to leave with Momoko and evacuate. He plans to go to the fourth island to do what Makoto did back then. He tells the students who wish to go with him to look to Jingi for their future studies because they are family, even when they don't get along. He then leaves. He arrives at the fourth island and begins to cast the barrier spell, but he's interrupted by Akka's arrival. They begin to argue about who's going to sacrifice themselves so that the other can look after the students. This gives the dragon enough time to appear right in front of them, aka doesn't waste any time. He transforms his hand into the Aromatama hand and goes to attack the dragon. However, the dragon is stronger than him. Haru hates that Akka is being reckless, and he has to back him up, but even he isn't a match. He charges the dragon, which doesn't stop attacking. He and Akka keep arguing, but when it's time, they decide to work together to attack the dragon at once. The attack lands, but it's still not enough to do damage. It only leaves them exhausted. The dragon then retaliates and hits Akka. Haru goes to check on him and tries to get him out of there, but the dragon doesn't let down. It attacks them again. Luckily, Yukito and the others arrive in time to shield them from the attack. The masters are not happy to see the kids there because it's very dangerous, but they let it be and use their help. They all work together and after attack while blocking the dragons. The job is still far from over as the dragon doesn't seem to weaken. They continue to do their best, but it becomes tiring. Haru uses one of his master spells to chain the dragon and push it down into the volcano. The dragon manages to break the chains off and gets out again. AKA decides to use his black magic to transform into an Aromatama, and with the help of Haru, attacks the dragon. Aromatama to Aromatama. Unfortunately, the dragon is still too strong and it doesn't get affected. When the battle starts to overwhelm the group, Jingi arrives to help out the situation. It is time for him to perform the ritual he has prepared for his whole life. Yukito asks Jingi where he has been, and Jingi replies that he was still trying to get his mind resolved. He asks Yukito if he wants his water dragon powers back, and Yukito admits. Jingi admits that he wants to protect his island and its people. He reveals that he knows the spell to perform the ritual needed to help Yukito return to his dragon form. Now, it is the time for him to do what he's been waiting to do. When the fire dragon starts moving again, Jingi announces to everyone that he will be doing his last feat as a lay master. This is because the ritual will cause his death, but he doesn't say this. He quickly casts a spell to transport himself and Yukito into the lay energy realm. Yukito is confused to be there, so Jingi explains. He has to act as a conduit connecting the water dragon's soul to the lay energy. Since his water energy is strong and highly compatible with Yukito, it will work. Yukito thinks that Jingi doesn't sound sure. That's because Jingi is actually scared to lose his life, but he still wants to protect his home. He asks Yukito to jump down, but Yukito refuses because it looks risky. Jingi tells him not to worry because he'll also be there. Yukito asks about Jingi being a conduit, and Jingi explains that he will have to give up his life for him. Yukito doesn't want that at all, but Jingi doesn't give him the chance to back out. He grabs him by the hand and jumps into the energy. They land into the water that the water dragon is sleeping in, and Yukito connects with it, restoring his powers and memories. As the power flows through him, Jingi pulls him out of the current before disappearing. In the real world, Jingi's body falls to the ground and Yukito wakes up. Yukito immediately produces so much water that it fills up the dried up lake, while the others get out of the way and watch from the side. Yukito then turns into the water dragon to confront the fire dragon. The water dragon uses its powers to attack the fire dragon and a battle ensues. But the battle is not entirely for victory, but for harmony. The two dragons are creating conflict to create harmony. The onlookers are worried for Yukito. They hope that he can harmonize with the fire dragon and restore peace, but they aren't sure whether or not he'll return back to them as a human being. Yukito, inside the water dragon, communicates with the fire dragon, apologizing for leaving it alone for so long. He calms it down, and the fire dragon starts to relax. They then merge into one and fall back into the lay energy as balance is restored once again. The abrupt ending of the fight confuses the others. Yukito returns as a human being and goes to wake Jingi up, but Jingi doesn't wake up. Haru tells him that Jingi is dead, which devastates him. Everyone returns home and informs the people of what happened. Soon, Jingi's funeral is held, and Yukito is still devastated. He stays in his room and doesn't talk to anyone. His friends are also worried about him, but more than that, they are saddened by Jingi's passing. Jingi was well known for his antics, and was memorable to many people on the island in a bad way. However, none of them thought he would meet such a fate so soon. Momoko visits Yukito in his room to invite him to see Jingi for the last time. Yukito is still sad and blames himself. If he was strong enough to turn into the water dragon on his own, Jingi wouldn't have had to perform the ritual. Momoko comforts him and tells him that Jingi wouldn't have done what he did if there was any other way. Later, Yukito sees a Matama pass through his room toward where Jingi's body is laying. He follows it there and finds Enuo keeping watch. Enuo thanks him for helping the island. However, he expresses disappointment that another family member had to pass for it to happen, which is heartbreaking. Yukito doesn't know what else to say because he's not proud of how it all turned out, even though he did help a lot. Enuo steps out of the room, leaving Yukito alone with Jingi. Yukito goes over to talk to Jingi and vents out all his frustration about what he did. He calls him selfish and demands that he wake up and explain himself. In that moment of rage, Yukito is pulled into the lay energy realm and finds Jingi holding onto a pole for dear life. Jingi asks for help because he's being pulled away by the mainstream and he doesn't want to go. Yukito doesn't know what to do, and Jingi mocks him for calling himself his student but failing to channel his power the right way. This causes Yukito to sarcastically turn away from him, prompting Jingi to apologize profusely. But at that moment, he gets pulled down by the current and Yukito is unable to stop him. Yukito then comes back to reality. He gets an idea and tells Momoko to call Haru and the others because he thinks he can still save Jingi. He runs outside and turns into the water dragon on his own. Haru, Aka, and their students all feel it when Yukito turns into the water dragon. They don't know what he's up to but become alert. In the air, Yukito imagines the energy realm and decides to go there again by diving into the volcano on the 4th island, breaking the barrier sealing it. He arrives in the ley energy and starts searching for Jingi. There is so much ley energy there that is being pulled by the current into the mainstream. Yukito doesn't think it will be easy to find Jingi's ley energy in time. However, he continues to look around. At that moment, he meets his father and recognizes him this time. They chat for a bit. Makoto explains that for the past 10 years that Yukito was in the mainland, he's been keeping the fire dragon dormant in the ley energy. The reason he wanted Yukito to grow up in the mainland was to develop his image as a human being rather than a dragon. This would ensure that Yukito would be both a human being and a dragon. He would continue to be his son. This wouldn't have happened on the island without him around. Now that Yukito has returned, Makoto leaves the job of keeping the fire dragon in check to him and hopes for the best. Although Makoto wishes none of the things that happened in the past 10 years had happened so that they could have stayed together as father and son, Yukito understands his father's reasons. After that, he asks him to help locate Jingi because he wants to bring him back to life. Makoto leads the way because he knows how to move around there. He's been dead for a decade now. On the way, Makoto teaches his son some things about ley mastery and how not to throw off the energies around him, especially in the ley energy realm. He likes talking to his son, even though it took too long. Yukito is surprised to hear that Makoto still considers him his son. It makes him happy. Makoto also reveals that he cast a spell on Jingi's soul, so he could linger a little longer before passing on to the afterlife. So the two hurry to get him before the spell wears off. While they travel in the ley energy, the remaining masters and their students gather at the dragon's shrine on the third island. Haru performs a calling ritual, which takes some time and calls on unwanted energies as well. Yukito and Makoto finally find Jingi, who is drowning in the energy current that is trying to sweep him away. He keeps pleading for Yukito to hurry up and save him, which Yukito does. Jingi was always hoping that Yukito would save him, even though he didn't believe it, and when Yukito tells him how everyone back home is sad, Jingi replies that there was no other way. Makoto reprimands him, there are plenty of other ways. If nothing worked, they should have let the islands burn down. After talking it out, Yukito asks Makoto if he knows where the island is so he can leave the realm with Jingi. Makoto replies that he did know because of the barrier on the volcano, but since Yukito broke it, he doesn't anymore. Yukito looks around and sees a twinkle far away and decides to head for it. He takes Jingi by the hand and leads him. He thinks the twinkle could be the way out and reaches out for it. Somehow he grabs it in his hand. It turns out to be Haru's call, which enables them to communicate. The call vanishes as it leads them in the direction they must go. Before they leave, they say their farewell to Makoto, who tells them that he has to keep the Fire Dragon Company in the energy realm. The two boys leave. Outside, Akka awakens his power to reach inside the water shrine set up for the water dragon. His hand breaks through to the energy realm and grabs Yukito. But for a brief moment, Yukito slips from the hold and is transported to another dimension where the fire dragon's energy is. It doesn't want him to leave, but he tells it to wait for him. He'll come back. He explains that he has to live on the island as well, because he's a ley master on top of being the water dragon. The fire dragon agrees to wait a little longer and lets him go. AKA grabs him again and pulls him and Jingi out of there. Yukito soon wakes up in the real world and finds that Jingi is no longer holding his hand. Back at home, Jingi wakes up and startles Momoko and Anuo. They know he was dead just a few minutes ago, but now he wants a beer. When Yukito finds that Jingi is alive again, he becomes happy and apologizes to his friends for worrying them. AKA and Haru are relieved to have their brother back. It makes them realize that they care for their family. This helps break the tension between them, and they decide to work together when it matters the most. AKA goes back to his master's teachings, and Yukito goes to high school with his friends. He now knows where he belongs, and he's happy to live. To all Leaf Village ninjas, that is it for today, Recap. Do not forget to join our clan, our army. My friend, you can do that by clicking that red button below the video. Destroy it for me with that bell to follow us in YouTube with many videos to come in the following days. So see you later, bro. Peace out.